Hey, what's up, YouTube? It's Richie from Boston. It is the 18th. It's June. It's the year 2020, or at least that's what they want us to believe. We are on my backup channel because my main channel is up, but sadly, I'm not allowed to interact with it whatsoever at all, meaning it's there till they take it down. I'm sure they're going to. If you were smart enough to subscribe to my backup channel, here you are. At any rate, Dr. Kaufman has been incredibly busy. He just did some very, very informative roundtables. He did one recently with Dr. Judy Mikovits. He did one with the British nurse whose name escapes me. I think she's got kind of a potty mouth.
It's Kate Shimarani.
All right, Kate Shimarani. At any rate, you've been busy and still you found time to make it here again to answer people's questions. Let me ask you, Dr. Kaufman, did the link that we left to go to you with the questions work out well?
Oh, yeah, it's working great.
Okay, cool.
I've got way more questions than I can answer, so I apologize to people in advance, but there's definitely a lot of good ones this week.
Cool. Well, then let's not waste any time. Jump right into it. If you need a link pulled up, let me know.
All right. Well, just a couple of quick reminders and announcements before I get started. And one is just people, it's one question per human only. Okay. So don't cheat and try to ask a second question. There's always next week. And also, like, some questions are just a little bit too complicated to answer in this kind of format. You know, I can't spend like a half an hour, and I would need more medical information. So like someone asked about Addison's disease, for example, I think that's definitely territory for a consult. So please check out my website if you want to learn more about that. And then last, just a word on recent censorship, because last time we did this, Richie, about 2 weeks ago, I announced a film coming out, Hippocratic Hypocrisy, that I collaborated with Spacebusters. And they took that down off Facebook, but they also did a number on me. They blocked my subscribers and have not been counting all the views. So I put it up on my website now. And so people can go to andrewkaufmanmd.com/hippo, Hippo, and I'm hosting the film there. So hope you'll go check it out.
And all the links will be pinned in the comment section after this video goes to YouTube, just FYI, at any rate.
Great, and the link is the same web address /RFB for questions for this show, and I'm sure we'll get just as good a questions next week. So are we ready to get started? All right, we have Richard from Georgia, and he asks, whenever I go out in the daytime and do physical activity, cut grass, ride bike, play, etc., I get symptoms of heat exhaustion within a few minutes and sometimes collapse. I'm very tired for the next 2 days as well. However, if I just walk in the daytime without exertion, I'm fine. What could be causing this? Thank you. Well, I think the most likely thing is dehydration, especially this time of year when it's hotter and you're exerting yourself and losing more fluids through sweating or rapid breathing. You actually, every time you exhale, you do lose a lot of fluids. So that is definitely the most likely cause. I'll just remind everyone that I recommend a minimum of 1 quart of clean water for every 60 pounds of body weight. And if you're going to be doing strenuous outdoor activity, you have to add to that to compensate for the loss. So that's most likely the issue. Hope that helps. All right. Next, we move on to Andrew from Clinton, New Jersey. I recently started landscaping full-time, so I'm in the hot sun a lot. So a related question. What do you recommend for sun protection, if any? I'm doing nothing now for sun protection. If I have a mistrust of sunscreen, is this mistrust warranted? Well, yes, it's definitely warranted. Most of the commercial sunscreen preparations are actually most likely the cause of skin cancer rather than helping you from it. They will protect you from a sunburn, but they have lots of toxic ingredients, and it does get absorbed through the skin, despite what you might think that the skin is not permeable. So I wouldn't recommend using any of those. The best thing to do is actually cover yourself up with clothing and don't stay out in the hot midday sun all day if you can help it. But if you're working landscaping, obviously, so you want to get like a hat with a wide brim to cover your face and neck for most of the day. You can get, it's good to get some exposure. You might consider wearing long sleeve shirts, like linen is a good material. It For the summer, it stays relatively cool. But if you do have some skin exposed for a long period, or like if you're taking the family to the beach for a day in the sun and you want to get some sun, one thing that I think is really good is carrot seed oil. And you can eat it. It's that safe. So putting it on your skin is not going to cause any problems. There are some people out there that have variations on it that might even be slightly better, but I've used this with my kids many times and it works great. It has something like a SPF equivalent of like 60. So for the extended hot sun, that would be a great option for you. All right, let's move on to Prague. I love how these questions come from all around the world. So this is Peace Celebrate Wee Ponytail from Prague. The question is, as you probably know, there is this virus from a lab narrative about COVID-19, even in my country. There is a molecular biologist, Sona Pekova, that claims this virus does not look of natural origin to her because its genome is messed up, etc. So what are your thoughts about such claims? Why these people interpret it in this way, and how is it even possible without the germ theory? How does it work? So excellent questions. And I don't see any evidence that there's any kind of engineered agent of disease that's in play here at all. And looking at the so-called genome of the virus, right, which is the DNA or RNA sequence that makes it unique according to gene theory. The way that they've even found any genome in this case is simply by looking for specific fragments of RNA that they already pre-identified some part of the sequence as being viral. And these are present in tiny amounts. And by the way, similar sequences have also been shown to be present in humans, like in exosomes, etc. And they amplify these little fragments, and then they piece them together in a kind of Frankenstein patchwork, filling in the missing gaps from a database that they say is just viral sequences, and make this hodgepodge genome. So it's not representative of a real thing. If they wanted to really sequence a genome, then you'd have to take the organism or the viral particle that has the intact genome, like one piece from end to end, just like you would take a human cell with 22 chromosomes, and they would all be intact. And then you could sequence the entire thing because you knew it came from that particle, and it would be one long strand, so you'd have a continuous sequence. But that has never been done. So whatever they're talking about with respect to this genetic analysis is essentially mostly nonsense. But I also think it would be really difficult to engineer something like that, because we don't really have proof of any viruses causing any illness. So I think if you were to use like the shell of an exosome, which is very similar to what we're talking about, and fill it with a toxic material, and then target it to a specific receptor, you could certainly do that. And especially if you injected it, it could deliver a toxic material to a cell. But I haven't seen any evidence of this happening, but this certainly could be something in the future. And in fact, the genetic-based vaccines that they're developing has a similar kind of technology to that. And I think that those are going to pose a lot of health risks. Anything you want to add about that, Richie? Because I know you've talked about vaccines a lot.
Well, just one of the questions was, somebody said, well, then how does the disease spread? Well, my answer was, it doesn't spread. None of this is accurate. The only way that the disease spreads, as we would traditionally believe it, I think, is when you go get a flu shot or they inject you. Do you see what I'm saying? Because I'm not the healthiest person in the world. I don't drink fluoride. I try not to eat prepared foods. I have a penchant for really cheap ice cream cones at night. It is what it is. I've given up pretty much everything else. So it is, what are you going to do? But I haven't been sick.
What they say, an ice cream cone a day keeps the doctor away.
I guess. But then I have doctors showing up anyways. You know what I mean? So it is what it is. But again, it's amazing when you look at people that have lived a life that are non-vaccinated. They'll never show you this. Someone that's been through, a 35, 40-year-old male. I recently saw a study on this where no vaccines their entire life and incredibly minimal doctor visits. And they were healthier than a person on the opposite side of the spectrum that did go to the doctor, did get regular vaccines, et cetera, physically and mentally, and almost always spiritually, they were much, much healthier and happier. So,
yeah, well, the doing those kind of studies has been suppressed by government funding. It's been requested lots of times, and they haven't looked at it. So there are some other studies done independently, but they essentially show the same thing.
I agree.
So you're right on. And the contagion issue, of course, it always comes up over and over again because it's so programmed into us that it's really hard to get past. But recently a study came out where they followed an asymptomatic carrier, which means, someone who tested positive for COVID-19. And you know what I think of the test, but nonetheless, this is a good scientific protocol, but who didn't have any symptoms, so they weren't sick. And they followed them around, and they made contact with 455 other individuals who were all negative, and not one of them converted to positive. So we can say for sure that if you're not symptomatic, you definitely can't spread this disease if it's spread by any means at all. And Richie, what you're talking about getting sick from a flu shot, I mean, that is correct. There's a lot of adverse reactions reported in the VAERS database from the flu shot, especially Guillain-Barré syndrome, which is a type of paralysis. But that I would say that's a common source. So everyone who gets the common source of the flu shot poison, they're the ones who get sick. And just like with food poisoning and cholera and yellow fever and many other diseases that are toxin related.
Everybody's mentioning, like, we're getting people from the UK and China in the chat saying that suddenly we're getting spikes. And before we went live, I mentioned to you that when this first broke out, to placate everyone, they said, don't worry, we have to lock everyone down. But when the summertime comes, the disease, which is actually a virus, the disease is wrong terminology, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. So, and you have to be careful what they mean by cases too. Generally, with cases they mean people tested positive with a test. And it could be most likely the antibody test, which is the one that gets the results back quickly. And the FDA clearly said that it's not accurate for diagnosis. So it's really meaningless, but they're just saying basically they're more positive tests. And that just means really that they're testing more people. So anytime they want to say more cases, what they do is just encourage more testing, and then they will find more cases. But in terms of like more people being sick or dying, that's not what the numbers look like coming in. It's pretty much almost over, even with all the false reporting. And so, like, remember, it was it 2 weeks ago or 2.5 weeks ago, the weekend the riots started and all the protests started, because there we had, tens, if not hundreds of thousands of people out ignoring social distancing and many of them not wearing masks. And so if we saw a surge of like hospital admissions right now for COVID, I think, that would be something to be concerned, but that's not what anybody's seeing or reporting. So, just a test that's positive is meaningless, especially when, you can't pass it on to someone else, as has been scientifically shown now.
Well, let me finish the thought that I was saying about, they told us that when the summer came, the disease wouldn't be able to survive. The weather would be too hot and it would kill it. Well, apparently people forgot that they told us this, because now that it's summertime and it works. I mean, we already told them there was going to be a second wave. We told them this was going to come, and here it is. They're going to pump this up. They're talking about doing a second lockdown. They're going to try to pull this on the 4th of July. They're going to try to lock people in on the 4th of July. But I recently put out a video where I asked people like Jennifer H. in Alabama, where they're saying the hospitals are overrun. If you've got a camera and you can get to a hospital without getting yourself locked up or in trouble, try to verify any of if any of that story is true, because the mainstream media is lying to us on an absolute epic scale, and this is nothing different. At any rate, I know you want to wrap this in an hour or so. Let's get back to it.
Okay, this is really important, because like also even if you look in the hospital, so let's say this time of year, you do get sometimes a surge in like heart attacks and strokes, because people are dehydrated from being out in the sun and they're doing strenuous work, just like the first snow shovel of the year. So, but those people, like, we saw a recent expose from Erin Marie Olszewski, who talked about this, that basically you come into the hospital, no matter what, they're going to label you as COVID, and then they're going to figure out a way to put you on the ventilator so that you die. So, that could be what you're seeing too. They could just orchestrate that, pretty easily at a moment's notice, because, it all comes down from the higher ups telling them how to treat the patients and where to put them. So
a friend of mine is a 20-year nurse, LPN in Boston, and her mom is having acute kidney failure.
Mm-hmm.
So I actually met with her, and she was out of her mind because of the toxins or whatever.
Yeah.
Like, she sounded like a crazy. She sounded like she was drunk, but apparently that's the toxins because the kidneys can't release it. And I had to stress to her, do not let them label this COVID. I mean, don't let them. So hopefully that's the case, but I'm interested to see how that plays out.
Yeah, well, they don't let the families in the hospital, so they can basically do stuff without the family knowing, and they, seem to know how to coerce people to accept the ventilator by telling them it's the only way they'll survive. So I hope things are okay.
Unbelievable.
All right, so now on a higher note, let's get back to some questions here. Well, maybe this one isn't so higher, but it's Karen from Rochester, New York, practically a neighbor to me. Hi, we don't yet know what the penalties will be for refusing the vax, but can you explore these issues? 1, what does the state of emergency allow for in terms of mandatory vax? 2, is there any such thing as medical exemption anymore, especially if a person has had a catastrophic reaction? So, yeah, I can answer you what I think the answer is, but I don't know exactly, and I think different states are going to be different. I think South Dakota has a bill that would prevent any mandatory medical treatment, including all vaccines. So that would be a great thing if that passes. And I heard one state, I'm not sure which one, just defeated a bill that was voted down that would have required mandatory vaccines. So I'll tell you in New York that after the measles outbreak that no one died from last spring, they got rid of the religious exemption and they made the medical exemption much, much harder. If I were to guess, I don't think they're going to allow medical exemptions for this new coronavirus type vaccine, but I can't know for sure. I think the penalties are going to be preventing you from accessing various types of services.
From what we've already seen, I just want to jump in real quick. From what we've already seen, they're going to make it so that you can't participate in society. You'll be the proverbial leper, a pariah. You know what I mean? Like they've already got the framework in place. They're going to force it on people one way or the other. So
right. You mean like you think it's going to be a complete lockdown until you're vaccinated?
That's it. Yeah.
Like everything will have to be delivered to you.
But maybe, but I mean, I don't even know if they're going to make it so that everyone either gets it or whatever, you're gone.
Right. I heard a conversation about like in California where they have the contact tracing that if you refuse testing, they would quarantine you and they would have like a, quote, helper to bring you groceries or make sure that you had all your needs provided.
Right. So you can have a professional troll with you at all times, be reading you and such. Yeah. Great.
Right.
All right. Have at it.
Okay. So, let me just add one thing to that I'm involved with a law group that we are pursuing a way out of this matrix system, and we are working on a remedy, and I already have basically the framework of it that will work for anyone out there in the general population as a way to get rid of your legal obligation to do the vaccine. So when the time comes that is necessary, I'll be announcing, ways to get involved in that. And so that you can take advantage of it. But nothing is guaranteed, but you have to be prepared to refuse in any case.
Absolutely. And on that vein, I'm glad you just said that because it reminded me, I met somebody who literally showed me the framework in a fairly timely fashion to extricate yourself from the U.S., basically a sovereign citizen. This guy was driving a brand new truck that he paid cash for. He's a veteran. He carries a passport, and that's it. No license plate, no registration, no insurance, no nothing, and nobody's bothering him. He gave me the entire layout on how to do it, and it's fairly simple and straightforward. So I will be getting to that. And in addition to what Andrew and his pals are cooking up.
Yeah, I think we have a very similar process because.
Cool. I'll show it to you. I almost totally forgot. I'm glad you said that.
Yeah, well, it's good because I mean, I think it's really important that people join up and collaborate on these types of strategies as it becomes more and more necessary, and we're more and more successful getting people, on board. All right, next we have Simon Rex from San Francisco. I have sores on my glans penis from psoriasis. Aside from castor oil, what else can I do? Thanks. Well, let me remind people that I'm not giving out medical advice here. This is just my personal opinion and research information. But I think for this problem to treat psoriasis in its entirety, one thing it's important to not be on the immunosuppressive type of drugs that they normally give for this. And then I think this is kind of a situation for the turpentine protocol. So that would, involve preparing yourself and taking turpentine internally. Dr. Jennifer Daniels has an excellent document on vitalitycapsules.com that you can download. It's called the Candida Cleaner Report. So I would check that out. And if you want more, specific instructions, definitely a consultation would be appropriate. All right. We do have a constitution, Ms. Spacecake. You're absolutely right, but it's not necessarily being followed at all right now. And we seem to be on the verge, if not already, under martial law, which sets aside our constitutional rights. So it'll be difficult to use that to protect yourself, but I still think that it's a great strategy. And, there are some good lawyers out there. I found one just recently by the name of Dundas from California, so check out her stuff. Mary Magdalene, that's great that she wrote in with a question from San Clemente. I recently went to the hospital for appendicitis. They gave me an IV antibiotic and now the pain has returned. How do I restore my appendix? Thank you and God bless. So this is a great question, and I actually had appendicitis before, but it was before I got wise and I had my appendix surgically removed, which thankfully was a success. But the appendix actually has an important role because I think it's the reservoir for all the different bacteria and other microbes that are in your gut, where they can reseed your gut if they need to be flushed out, like due to removing a toxin or some other reason, like if you have diarrhea. So you definitely want to keep your appendix. And really what appendicitis is it's constipation. So what you have to do is take some steps to relieve the constipation, and that's what's going to help you. So one thing is hydration. You're probably dehydrated. You need to increase your water substantially, and definitely stay away from the IV antibiotics. They just provided relief of the symptoms and interfered with the healing process, but they did not cure the underlying thing. So you could start with enemas. Depending on how sensitive you are or how thin or damaged the tissue is in your appendix, you could consider a colonic. That would be a more definitive way, but doing enemas would really be, and you might have to do multiple ones to relieve the pressure and let the fecalith get out of the appendix. You can add some mild stimulant laxatives like Senna and Cascara, but you don't want to overdo it because you don't want to risk a rupture. So between those measures, I think you should probably have some relief pretty quick. You might feel better after just one single enema.
And if they happen to come to your door demanding you're tested, just whip out your enema and tell them that you're busy. You know what I mean? It might drive them away. Oh, I love how medical people just say the grossest things. No problem. No problem. All right,
well, it's funny how like the things that we all have to do every day, become so gross that we can't talk about them,
Yeah, nothing like an ice cold enema in the morning.
Well, I don't know about ice cold, but maybe there is a role for that. I'll have to try it out sometime.
Yeah, there you go. All right, I'm out.
All right, we have Elizabeth from Oakville, Ontario. She writes, I've had a chronic cough for many years, dry tickle in the throat. My family doctor has sent me for many tests, allergists, pulmonologist, asthma test, and ear, eye, and nose specialist. Wow, they made a lot of money off you, Elizabeth. None can identify what causes the cough. I do a sinus rinse daily and carry water and cough drops if I feel a tickle, cough coming. I never know when the cough is going to hit me. Any suggestions? So yeah, most likely this is another case of dehydration. So 1 quart per 60 pounds of body weight. And, you know, it's not surprising we're getting a lot of dehydration questions this time of year because it's just gotten hot and people don't keep up with the fluids when they're out in the sun and doing stuff and sweating. So, you know, I'd say that's the most likely reason. Of course, there could be other causes. You know, if the allergist didn't say it was allergies, that's very surprising because these days it seems like everyone has some degree of allergies. So if hydrating yourself doesn't help, you have to get in touch with me for a consultation. Okay, we have MK Joe. I hope that doesn't mean MK Ultra from Dallas. I've been curious about autoimmune diseases such as MS. It's supposed to be hereditary, however, it isn't found in every country. Do you have any thoughts on autoimmune diseases? Thank you very much. Well, I certainly do. I don't think they are what you think they are, that our body doesn't attack itself. It's smarter than that. And I don't think, so most of the time when they say things are hereditary, that could mean a lot of things because like you inherit your religious beliefs, for example. So most people think it means it's related to genes or genetics, but not necessarily, right? You also inherit, you know, wealth or poverty and many other things that have nothing to do with our genes. So when a disease like that runs in the family, most likely it's because the family has a similar lifestyle to each other, because you tend to, you know, eat the same kind of foods and have the same kind of habits that you did growing up under your parents' guidance. So that's probably the most likely reason. I think MS and other neurodegenerative diseases are mostly due to metal toxicity, and that combined with certain factors can cause problems with your immune system becoming involved, but mostly because your immune system actually carries the metals around to different parts of your body. So depending on what's going on, what the situation is, it could bring them to various areas and cause different kinds of disease. So I think, you know, the treatment strategy for this, you know, would involve a lot of cleansing and detox. I think even the Gerson Institute protocol work with people with this situation. There's a book that I would definitely recommend by Anne Baroch. That's Boroch. And I can't remember the name of the book, but she basically cured herself of MS when she was young, and this led to a career in natural medicine for her. So she's a very good resource. All right, next we have Thorough Hedge from Rough Edge, Georgia. Dr. Kaufman, have you heard of the VMAT2 gene and vaccine, the God gene? From what I could tell, the vaccine is a chemical lobotomy. Thanks. So yeah, it's funny you should bring this up because I was criticized a little bit showing a clip of that video from about the vaccine because James Corbett did excellent reporting and debunking the validity of that video, saying that it was faked. So I looked a little bit further into it because I thought, you know, I'd heard something about that gene. There you go. The Candida cure is a good one. So the first one for Anne Baroch. Thanks, Richie. So wait, what was I talking about now?
Oh, you were talking about how you look almost identical to James Corbett, and it made you
my doppelganger.
Sort of.
So yeah, one of these days, one of us will change our style, and then we'll see how similar we really look. But
well, you can tell the difference because you're much more upbeat than James is.
Well, that, you know, only when I'm on the show with you, Richie, you kind of bring that side.
You've both been on. You've both been on, so multiple times. So at any rate. So the VMAT2 gene actually is a real gene, and there's a book about it called The God Gene, written by an investigator from one of the federal agencies. And then I also found one study on it, and it did seem to be more prevalent to have this higher expression of it in people with strong religious beliefs. So it is a real thing. Whether they've, you know, actually developed a vaccine that could interfere with it or not, I don't know, but they're talking about using a vaccine that's going to modify our genetics, and there are lots of
other technologies like gene drive related to that and CRISPR technology. So it certainly could be in the mix, but it's kind of a bit of guesswork exactly what their game plan is. About that, Richie, I just saw a video about someone from GSK, GlaxoSmithKline, like the biggest vaccine manufacturer in the world, that there was a whistleblower who said they had strategies for infertility, like to generate antibodies against beta HCG, which is the pregnancy test factor.
I think that stuff's been in effect for a long time, because if you look at the numbers, especially among people that would was it the woman from the CDC? Someone said that the problem with vaccinations was white people. White people that were the ones that were standing up to it and they didn't want it. What she meant to say was people that are actually more inclined to read and research. That's probably going to get me in trouble, but I mean, I'm trying to.
Well, yeah, like people of a higher socioeconomic status.
But if you look at the number of Caucasians having children, it's plummeted. The sperm levels of Caucasian males over the last decade or two has plummeted. I think they've implemented this a long time ago.
Yeah. Well, you can see all those fertility clinics that have popped up in all the suburbs. Those were never around when we were kids.
It's crazy. I mean, I know you know this, but Bill Gates' father, Bill Gates Sr., who Dr. Anthony Fauci is in a picture with way back in the day with George Soros, with all the Illuminati head people. Bill Gates Sr., who was also a giant of a man. He was a big dude, 6'7". Planned Parenthood was his baby, no pun intended. You know what I mean? These guys have had this. Yeah. This is what these people do. You and I, most people work month to month, week to week, some people day to day. These people work generation to generation to generation. This is a lifelong goal to do what they're doing, and we are at the apex right now. Like, they are doing this, and they're not stopping unless we're successful, and they're doing everything they can to stop us. I warned you about this when we first met up. Remember, they're going to start, your views are going to start counting. No one's going to find your videos. Your videos are going to start disappearing, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So,
no, I know I'm targeted.
Well, you're definitely targeted, but it's amazing how you can come on here and smile every single week. No, Koch's postulates were not fulfilled on COVID-19, correct?
Not even close.
Not even close. So how are we even here? But we are, because most people don't know what that is at all. They think they think Koch's postulates is part of the Koch brothers movie making apparatus or whatever. You know what I mean?
Yeah, well, I mean, that's it's pretty detailed, but certainly, people have just bought whatever they're told.
Is Dell going to get you on?
Not that I'm aware of.
Well, we're working on it. I married your video the other day, but I can't get it on my main channel yet.
Yeah,
my main channel's not gone yet. I just can't interact with it. I'm locked out. So.
Wow, that's too bad.
It is what it is. All right, do your thing. Do your thing. I know you got to try to wrap this in a.
All right. Well, yeah. Let's see what we're on. We've got. We're good. Still got 25 minutes.
Okay, real quick, because there's a zillion comments. Every week we leave the direct link to Dr. Kaufman. You send him your question, and then the following week, if the creek don't rise and the good Lord's willing, he comes back and he answers it. So we couldn't possibly answer the questions out of the chat. So I apologize. At any rate.
Yeah, no, and I mean, not even all the questions that were submitted. We'd be here for 3 or 4 hours if I tried to do every single one. So be patient. Keep submitting your question. I'll get to it if it's hopefully. All right, we've got Heidi Duverger from Bavel, Noord-Brabant, the Netherlands. I'm sure I didn't say that correctly because Dutch is really hard to pronounce. But I do know where the Netherlands is. I have a distal plate made from titanium after shattering my wrist 2 years ago. Would you remove that if you had one yourself, even if that means extra surgery? So no, most likely not, especially if it's not causing any problems. So if it's not causing problems, just leave it alone and, consider yourself lucky that your wrist is working well. If it is causing problems, then that's a different story, but you'd have to be, pretty certain about that, I think, to risk doing wrist hand surgery. Again, it's pretty delicate stuff and you don't want, your hands are important. So Anyway, hopefully, hopefully that helps. Better to do nothing. All right, Doug Askin from Tari, Australia. Hi, I was told I have Hep C, and about 20 years ago, and about 3 years ago, I was looking into getting treatment, but then I decided to try beetroot juice and trying to eat healthy. Well, that's a great decision, Doug. So can diet help get rid of or lessen the effects of Hep C? Well, there is no such thing as Hep C, so you don't really have to worry about treating it or getting rid of it at all. But you may have liver damage. That I don't know because you didn't give me enough information. But there would be symptoms that you were having that would suggest liver problems, and they could be a variety of things. So if there's no evidence of that, or if they didn't tell you you had a fatty liver or anything like that, then you don't need to worry about it or give it one other thought. But definitely do eat healthy because that's going to make a difference overall. Beetroot juice is actually really good for increasing your bowel movements, which is a main way of cleansing that I recommend. So definitely keep drinking that. It also gives you a lot of iron, which may not be an issue for you, but for you vegans out there who want to make sure you get enough iron, beets are definitely a good source. All right, so Chris from New Zealand. What is the best way to treat seborrheic dermatitis? I've struggled with dandruff on my scalp and cheeks for some time and need something that treats the root cause, as shampoos and lotions aren't solving the problem. So I have an answer for this, but I was hoping to get a better answer from a friend. Let's see if she got back to me. No, didn't hear back yet. So I think, this is a toxicity issue. It's most likely liver related. So one thing you could do is you could try some milk thistle seed. You want to take like 3 capsules once a day and then work up to 3 capsules twice a day. And that may help just on its own. The other thing that you might go is doing a liver flush, which is a bigger step, but it should be pretty definitive. You could also consider just doing like an elimination diet. And then you could add a turpentine protocol to that or not. You might have really good information. So someone mentioned about Amanda Vollmer, so that's who I was looking for an answer from about the seborrheic dermatitis, actually. So maybe we will invite her on sometime in the future. Okay, so now we've got a good one here because this is such a common problem. And this is Cameron from Denver. Hi, Dr. Kaufman. Do you have any thoughts on chronic migraine disease? I've been dealing with this for years and have yet to find anything that really works consistently. And then another question. So we'll just go with, well, maybe we'll do both these questions because they're both good ones. But with the migraines, that's easy. It's almost always something in your diet, usually some kind of processed food, chemical, or additive. Did you want to interject something, Richie?
Negative. I would just put this up because someone just asked about it. No worries.
Oh, yeah. Excellent book.
That's the one you recommended. I got it. I got it on Kindle, and a lot of people have got it. It's that's the, out of everything, that's the thing that I'm most grateful for out of this entire problem that we're facing is the information like the invisible rainbow, things like that. I've put up videos before where artists have rendered what it would look like if we could actually see the frequencies around us, and we are literally submerged, surrounded. Yeah. It's over our head. If it was water, we'd be drowning, and people don't understand it. Frequencies are a big deal, man. I like how you correlated all the pandemics over the years, how they all literally lined up with the introduction of in-the-wall electricity, for instance. You know what I'm saying? Just all sorts of technological, what's the word, man? Technological introductions always had some sort of a pandemic type thing tied to them because certain people can't take frequencies. At any rate.
Well, it's like, I mean, we just like don't really realize that our bodies, we're electric beings. Like we're generating, we've got electricity flowing through us like all of our functions practically. Like if our cells that act as batteries, right, they have an electric potential, and if they don't maintain that, they can't be healthy. So it's like it's such a crucial aspect, and we just understand so little about it, and it's practically ignored except for like EKGs and EEGs. So it's really important, and you're right. It's like we can only see a tiny portion of the spectrum, but like less than a hundredth of a percent or something like that. But there's all this other radiation around us. We just don't have like sense organs to detect it. And it's always there in the background. And then, of course, with this newer technology, they keep adding more and more artificial, types of frequencies and vibrations. And of course, they're going to affect our body because we run on the same stuff, So I think there's a question about that here, actually. And by the way, headaches are one of the things that is a common symptom. If you have like a smart meter, which has like a really strong Wi-Fi signal, or if you're the type of person that's more sensitive and you always have your Wi-Fi on or that kind of thing, like headaches are very common. So it's definitely something, Cameron, to think about. But most likely it's some kind of food additive or preservative that causes the headaches. Like a lot of times it's in processed carbohydrates like crackers or chips or something like that. So the best thing to do is to go through an elimination diet where you basically only eat, very, very clean vegan food for a period of time, increase your water, increase your bowel movements. It's basically just a cleansing procedure. It might take a month. I usually recommend a 30-day procedure, and that should help get rid of it. And then you got to figure out exactly what the offending thing is so you can avoid it from now on. So that would be my best advice. And then the other question,
Michelle, I would say I'm gonna leave a link so you can contact Dr. Kaufman yourself, as opposed to getting into this in the middle of this right now.
Yeah,
definitely.
Leukemia, yeah. I would also suggest looking at the Gerson Institute website. But that's not an emergency. That's not like acute leukemia. It's a chronic one. So, there's definitely time to figure it out, but there's a lot of things that could be done for CLL. So yeah, definitely get in touch with me. Okay, so the other question was, so what would you recommend to someone to get off a long-term maintenance dose of buprenorphine? I used to be on Suboxone, but now Subutex, which has no naloxone. So yeah, that's very nasty stuff. The way I look at this whole Suboxone or methadone thing is you're basically trading your drug dealer on the street for a drug dealer in a white coat. So, you can pick which dealer you like. Probably the public will finance the one in the white coat, but not the other one. So it's very nasty stuff. It can be a little challenging to get off of. But, I think the best thing to do is a rapid taper and just treat yourself symptomatically. And it's not going to be super fun, but you can get through it. So like I said before, you want to make sure you manage the diarrhea, because dehydration from diarrhea and vomiting, those are the biggest issues. So you can use Imodium for the diarrhea, and you can take quite a bit of it, 2 tablets every 2 hours until you get relief. Like, don't worry about overdosing on that. And then you need something to help manage the nausea. So fennel seeds could be really good. You can make a tea out of them. You could just chew on them in your mouth and swallow them. And ginger, which could be fresh or dried, will help. If it's available in your area without too much trouble. Some cannabis to help with the nausea for a few days might be okay, but don't make that the next habit. Make sure it's very time limited. And hopefully that should be able to get you off of it in maybe about a week's time, and then you'll be free of it. All right, next question is from Gary in Belfast, Northern Ireland. Well, hello, Gary. Hello, Doc, great work. I have 2 questions. Again, trying to cheat here, so let's see what the first question is. My stupid doc, well, we don't have to use name calling here, but maybe ignorant is better. Put me on PPIs. Those are proton pump inhibitors, the drugs for acid reflux and heartburn, like Prilosec was the original one. Because I have a sliding hiatal hernia, I'm not a doctor, I'm just an average Joe, but your name's Gary, you're an average Gary. And I know PPIs can do more damage, and I know the hiatal hernia stops the lower esophageal sphincter from closing, and PPIs stop blah, 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 blah. Okay, so I don't know if you actually had heartburn to begin with, but if you didn't have any symptoms, then you definitely should stop taking that medicine right away, because the proton pump inhibitors have several problems associated. One is it actually looks like, they were touted as a way to prevent cancer of the esophagus, which they said occurs from like repeated exposure to stomach acid that goes up into the esophagus. But it looks like the data are out now are pretty clear that show the proton pump inhibitors are actually the cause of esophageal cancer. So there's been a rise in esophageal cancer since they've been in use. So it's, just for that reason alone. But also, if you do have heartburn and you're using them, you're the longer you use it, if even just more than a few weeks, you're going to have difficulty getting off, because you're going to have rebound acid reflux. And I had this, so I took them for like 20 years before I got wise. And it took me over a year to get off of it, because when I tried to rapidly get myself off, it was like my whole body was permeated with stomach acid. It was the weirdest, craziest thing. So try to get off as soon as possible. If it's been a while, then you just do it slowly and drop the dose very slowly. Like I even went down to taking one pill a week for a couple of months at the end before I completely got off. But now I have really essentially no problems with reflux unless I eat a certain kind of crappy food, which I only do occasionally, but everybody cheats sometimes. So definitely get off of it. What you can do for heartburn is don't eat first thing in the morning, move your meal to later in the day, but also don't eat too close to bedtime. I would leave at least 3 hours minimum of no eating before bedtime. And you can use fennel seeds, and you can't really hurt yourself, so you could do this as much as you need to. Just take a handful, put it in your cheek and start chewing on it and swallowing it. It should go a long way to help. Also increase your hydration. That definitely makes a big difference. What you want to do is get your stomach making acid again. Now for the hiatal hernia, I recommend that you start supplementing with collagen. So like a cup of really gelatinous bone broth a day for a couple months at least, and that'll help your diaphragm. What it is that basically the diaphragm is sliding up the esophagus and may cause a mechanical obstruction. So to repair that, you increase the collagen, it'll give it the raw materials, and hopefully that'll be enough. If not, you need cleansing along with that. So I guess that's a little bit complicated, but hopefully it made sense. All right, next we have Victoria Plistanova from Uzbekistan. Excellent. Hello. My question would be about alopecia. I have a boy who at age 1.5, who had at 1.5 years of age a vaccination. Since then has been having alopecia. Now he's 10. His mother feeds him ketogenic diet now, and yet they're looking forward to a new view on the situation. His IgE is high though. I wouldn't worry about that. The elevation is not related to disease duration, blah, blah, blah. So it sounds like toxicity in the hair follicles, which it could be from the vaccination, could be metals in the hair follicles. So what I would say is to make a paste of either bentonite clay or a diatomaceous earth. So get the food grade version of these products and mix in some distilled water to make a paste, and then apply the paste onto the scalp, and do this at least once a day. Try to keep it on his head as long as possible. And you may need to do this for a while, like even a couple of months. before you get major improvement. You can also, during the daytime, put some castor oil on the scalp, and that approach, castor oil during the day, and then bentonite clay or the diatomaceous earth paste, sometime like at bath time or whatever, that's a perfect time to do it. That should, over time, help the hair grow back. So hopefully that works. If not, as usual, get in touch with me for a consultation. All right, we have Will from Rio de Janeiro. What pros and cons can you tell about vaping? Thanks a lot, and God bless. So, Richie, this one I thought pertained to you.
I'm hearing it. I hear it.
And no, but I mean, you do it the right way, the safe way that I recommend. Like we talked about this once before. So, like overall, maybe vaping is not the best thing in the world, but I think it's the main problem with cigarettes is the chemical additives. There's over 100 chemicals that they put in the tobacco, and includes things like that are known and unknown. But one of the known things is benzene, and we know benzene causes cancer. It's one of the most carcinogenic organic solvents. So the important thing is, to not be exposed to those chemicals. When vaping first started out and there were like small companies making the vaping supplies, there were really no problems with people's health. And I think a lot of people successfully quit smoking as a result of that. But then the tobacco companies started buying up the vaping companies and merging them. And now, we have these big conglomerates. And I think they started putting the same kind of chemical additives in that to maybe make it more addictive, to sell more, right? And so this is what caused all those like things where, people were going into the ER with respiratory distress or other problems from vaping. So I would say if, one, it's definitely a good way to quit smoking because you can actually control how much nicotine if you make your own. So you can like slowly taper yourself off so it'll be less. And then if you use like good materials like vegetable glycerin, especially if it's organic, and then, only flavorings that are basically derived from things that you would eat like foods and not, synthetic chemicals, except for the nicotine, of course, you're going to add that. I think it's a pretty safe thing. I don't think you're going to do nearly the damage that you do with all those chemicals, and possibly not even any damage at all. So hopefully that makes you feel better.
I'm not trying to live forever. If I was, I wouldn't be doing this. You know what I'm saying? Poking the bear constantly. Hey, the military's hiding vehicles. Here's a satellite image of where they are. What could go wrong? Yeah.
Yeah. Well,
we're all gonna have a confrontation soon, and mine will end the way it's always ended in my life. So vaping's the least of my worries. At any rate.
So moving on, we have Keisha Mo from Wahiawa, Hawaii. What are your thoughts on child vaccines, DTaP, Hib, polio, PCV13? I'm not even sure what that is, and rotavirus. So I think I've stated my thoughts a few times. There's no evidence that vaccines have ever prevented a disease. And there's lots of evidence that vaccines are very toxic and are a cause of much of chronic disease in our country. So I would definitely recommend not to participate in that whatsoever. And also, most of these illnesses that you mentioned are extremely rare, or they only occur as a result of vaccines these days, like polio. But rotavirus, I thought I'd mention because that represents a fairly common thing that kids get, which is they get like a stomach bug, right? That's what we call it. What it really is it's a toxin, usually a foodborne toxin that could be made by a microorganism, and that causes vomiting and diarrhea. And this is very easy to cure. So I've been successful many times with this. You just take some activated charcoal. So if you're giving this to children, the way to do it is you wait until right after they throw up and they have that window of time where they're not nauseated. That's when you can get it down. And so I would fill, get a tall glass and put 1 teaspoon of activated charcoal in there. And you can get the type that's from coconut shells. And then add a little bit of juice to make it palatable, like, maybe 1 or 2 fingers, and then the rest with water. And you got to stir it up vigorously and like stir it right up to the moment you put it to the child's mouth, so it doesn't get this, chalky stuff on the top. And have them, chug as much as possible, then give it another stir, maybe add a little bit more water to thin it out so you get as much of it down as possible. And what you'll find is they may throw up or have diarrhea one more time after that, or they may not at all. And basically within an hour, they'll be asking for food. So, that's much, much safer and much more effective than getting a vaccine filled with poisons and metals. Okay, next we have Lakia M from Cleveland, Ohio. And this is a question about fibromyalgia. Is there a way to heal the body? Yes, I think that's another time you should get the Candida Cleaner Protocol from vitalitycapsules.com. I think that the turpentine protocol is the most likely to benefit. All right, Richie, we're getting down to the 4-minute mark here. So is there anything that you want to
have like one? Well, here's one. They're not going to listen. But apparently a family member of mine just got diagnosed with cancer, stage 1. She went back to the doctor, and in a matter of a week or so, it went to stage 3 because they misdiagnosed it. And she's getting ready to do the chemo and all this other stuff. And I can't imagine how you can believe that being radiated and taking chemotherapy isn't what's going to kill you. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, well, it's a really hard thing because, people are scared that they're going to die. And so, when you're scared, just like when you're scared of getting sick from COVID, it's hard to accept new information and make rational decisions. And then you've got all these people in your life that are
probably hard. It's probably also hard to stay healthy when you're scared, thinking you're going to die.
Absolutely. And, it's like all the family members and all the medical people, they're all coercing you to do it. And they want you to do it fast right away. Often in the hospital, especially, they're like, we can start the chemo, in a couple of hours. As soon as they have that tissue biopsy, they're ready to go. So it's hard to overcome. But if you look at what the science says, chemotherapy is not curing anyone. It probably hastens people's death. It's probably one of the leading killers, actually. And, cancer is, depending on which one, is something that is highly treatable. And there are many different ways that people have been cured of cancer or improved substantially and had longer lives. So, if you want to investigate those, you could definitely get in touch with me or go to the Gerson Institute's website because they have excellent information.
They're not going to listen anyways. I mean, at all. They're not going to listen whatsoever at all. So it makes no difference. I felt
sometimes even people come to me for a consult because they want to know, are there alternatives, but they've been so, brainwashed that it's really hard for them to even, listen to what I say fully, even though they're paying for it. So it's a tough thing, but you never see me going to an oncologist, that's for sure.
All right. So that's it.
Well, wait. I could take 1 or 2 more. There was
one.
Well,
have at it.
It was good.
I got no problem.
This is R.C. Lopez from Fresno, California. I'm a carpenter for over 30 years. What's your take on the tetanus vaccine? Is it a vaccine? Stepping on any nails or wood slivers that puncture the skin? We've been told the tetanus shot is good for 7 or 11 years. Is it better safe than sorry? Okay, so this is a good one I wanted to answer because, first of all, tetanus, you won't get it from a rusty nail. That's like an old wives' tale. Where the bacteria that makes the tetanus toxin, and the toxin is what is dangerous, and it can cause lockjaw, which is really unpleasant and can obstruct your breathing. So it's the kind of thing that if you do get it, you need emergency treatment, but it's extremely, extremely rare. So really, if you're not around a ranch where there's a lot of cow manure, there's really no chance of having this problem at all. But if there is cow manure and you have an open wound and you step on your foot and you step on the cow manure and there happens to be that bacteria growing with that toxin, that would be the way to get it. So you really don't need to worry about it at all. And the vaccine really is not going to prevent it anyway. It's just poison. So hopefully that answers. And then I think we could do one more question, Richie. Let's see which is a good one.
Oh, it's a magical question.
It's magical. Well, that was actually my alarm.
All right.
But oh yeah, here, this is the one I think, because this is a big question a lot of people have, and I'm going to talk about this more at length on a debate that I'm having with a medical student this Sunday. But this is from Carol Day in Traverse City, and she writes, "I loved your recent interview on London Real." Well, thank you. You talked about excess in mortality and all-cause mortality, averaged the past 3 years, blah, blah, blah. Can you show me where to find the data? So you can find it on the CDC website. It's kind of a tricky link. But I want to just make a slight correction, because I had been looking at the data, and it's been, provisional all along, because additional data keeps rolling in for prior weeks. And it does look like there were a few weeks where they did have a slightly higher rate of excess mortality. And, we can't really know till the end of the year exactly what the magnitude is going to be averaged out. And of course, we don't know if we're going to be facing a second wave or how that might affect things. But it's not that many extra people. It's certainly within the range of a bad flu season. But I think it's important to mention that those excess deaths did not occur from any viral disease. They occurred from a combination of factors. One is, everybody knows that the whole medical system practically was shut down except for COVID. So you had people that would go to the hospital for emergencies that were staying at home and not going and not getting treatment. So they were dying, of things like heart attacks and drug overdoses and renal failure and things like that. Also, like, people didn't have access to their doctors, so they were not able to manage their prescription drugs. And, like just insulin alone and diabetes drugs that can lower your blood sugar, there's a study that shows that 1% to 2% of all visits to the emergency department are related to low blood sugar. And this is highly lethal. So if people are misguessing or changing their dietary habits and still taking the same insulin or other drugs, they could easily die from low blood sugar without treatment. So there's all those kind of things. Then we had all the mismanagement in the nursing homes and withdrawing care, not allowing DNRs even if the family wants it. Then you had all the craziness in the hospital where they're labeling everyone with COVID, and they're putting people on respirators directly from a nasal cannula when skipping all the steps, and even sounded like some people just had anxiety and then they end up on a ventilator for a panic attack, and that will kill you. So all of these factors combined, then you have the increase in suicides, you have the vitamin D deficiency from people being locked up for so long, you have the increase in addiction because liquor stores are an essential business. So if you're stuck at home with nothing to do, people were drinking more. So all of these things conspired together to increase the mortality. And it's very tragic because it could have all easily been prevented just by, letting us live free lives.
Well done, man. It amazes me how happy you are to do this. It just amazes me how happy you are to do this, man. I really appreciate it, and especially with all the attacks and all the censorship, but it's not going to get any better. They're already showing their cards. I mean, they're going to push a second wave on people, I can't help but think it's going to be on the 4th of July. They already took away Easter, and people basically rolled over and took it. I mean, that's a big one. That's a big one. And people took it. So let's see how it works on the 4th of July. And there'll be another event. There'll be another log in the fire, so to speak. These guys they're on it. They're making their march. I've been watching the World Economic Forum, and these guys are. This is Agenda 21 under the guise of COVID, basically. Days of Noah YouTube channel just did a great video tying all that together. It's about 21 minutes. Days of Noah. If you guys want to check it out.
I've been really impressed with his analysis. Like, it's some
he's your age, and he's very, very well read. I mean, he reads books that I can't even pronounce the author's name. I don't claim to be anything, man. People show up, so I bring on smart people.
I love how he, ties things together and gives you a big picture analysis. It's very poignant and, excellent analysis.
He just put one up today. So check out Days of Noah YouTube channel. If you've got a question for Dr. Kaufman or you want a consultation on something like leukemia, etc., the links will be pinned in the comment section below. You can go directly to him and he'll square that away for you. All right.
All right. Thanks so much, Richard.
We really need to get Dr. Kaufman on with Dell Bigtree so he can straighten him out as well. We'll see what happens. If Dell doesn't pick it up, it'll be very telling. It'll be very telling because he has about 80% of the picture, but the other 20% is what's keeping everybody stuck where they're at, in my opinion. But at any rate, Richie from Boston, Dr. Andrew Kaufman. This is live on both channels. We both got about the same amount of viewers, which is phenomenal. And we are out.